Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Nandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parividagacharya Astachara Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yesterday morning, we read a little section from the Backward Glance, Bhurijan Prabhu's book, which is covering the 11th and 12th cantos. A lot of pages, a lot of work. We read a little summary of the 9 teachers of the 24 that comes in chapter 7. gurus teaching the Avadhuta Brahman. So now I'm going to read just a few chapter 8, little summary. So previously we discussed the Python, verses 1 through 4. O King, this is text 1 from chapter 8. The embodied living entity automatically experiences unhappiness in heaven or in hell. Similarly, happiness will be also experienced even without one seeking it. Therefore, a person of intelligent discrimination does not make any endeavor to obtain such material happiness. That's what the Python guru taught him. This is the Avadhuta Brahmana. The Avadhuta Brahmana learned from the Python. On a practical level, this means accepting whatever food comes by destiny without regard to its quality or quantity. It also means not striving for anything material while remaining alert and active in pursuit of one's spiritual interest. Here's a Bhakti Shastri question. Does that sound familiar to anything that's within Rupa Goswami's teachings? Anyone? Atyahara? Not endeavoring in excess for accumulating things. What comes naturally, fine. You perform prescribed duties, fine. What comes from those prescribed duties, fine. And be satisfied with what comes from the performance of your prescribed duty. Due to guna and karma, this is going to come or that's going to come, whatever it is. Not over expectation, not over jubilation or distress when something good or something, modest comes. Why? That attachment to Sat. Devotional service to Krishna. That's the lesson from the Python. And that was number 10. Number 11, the ocean. We heard about the ocean. We're going to hear some more. The ocean is deep. And from the ocean, the Brahmana learned that depth means one doesn't overflow or rejoice during times of abundance or dry up or feel morose during times of lack. Now we're going to be hearing about the ocean shortly. And then we're going to hear about the moth this morning. The ocean and the moth. The moth, what do you learn from a moth? The moth taught him to be detached from the desire to see a woman's form. Quote, this is text 7. One who has failed to control his senses immediately feels attraction upon seeing a woman's form, which is created by the illusory energy of the Supreme Lord. Indeed, when the woman speaks with enticing words, smiles coquettishly, and moves her body sensuously, his mind is immediately captured, and thus he falls blindly into the darkness of material existence, just as the moth is maddened by the fire, rushes blindly into its flames. That was text 7, which we're going to hear this morning. The purport to the next text continues this point. Quote, however, the foolish relationship based on material sex attraction begins by seeing, and thus rupa or form is very prominent in the process of ruining one's intelligence. Paragraph. Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur takes this idea and extrapolates it into a principle. What's that? The moth teaches that the attachment to form is the cause of destruction. This is explained in 2 verses. Although each of the 5 senses contribute to one's becoming attracted to a woman or any other sense object, sight is the first to fall victim. Thus, form is the chief sense object. Okay, so that's a little preview, summary, and well. So now we're going to go to this compilation of commentaries. We read verse 5, so now we're in verse 6. Verse 6. We read part of it. So this is during the rainy season. This is the ocean. During the rainy season, raging rivers rush towards the ocean. And during the summer, the same rivers contain hardly any water. Still, the ocean doesn't increase in size during the rainy season, nor does it dry up in the summer. Similarly, a saintly person who has accepted the Supreme Lord as his goal of life should not be overjoyed when he receives material opulence or become morose when he has nothing. And here's Bhaktisiddhanta's gloss or summary of Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur's commentary. Even though during the rainy season the swollen rivers rush into the ocean, it does not become swollen. In the summer, the ocean does not dry up due to lack of water from rivers which have become shallow. Similarly, the transcendentalist should not become joyful when in a materially prosperous condition, and should not lament when he finds himself impoverished. Actually, the devotees of Lord Hari, who are fixed in devotional service, feel the sweetness of that service and lament when they feel the lack of devotional service. The devotees of Narayana will have joy and sorrow by attaining or not attaining the sweetness of realization of the Lord. Moving on, text 7, 11:8-7. One who has failed to control his senses immediately feels attraction upon seeing a woman's form. We read this, which is created by the illusory energy of the Supreme Lord. Indeed, when the woman speaks with enticing words, smiles coquettishly, and moves her body sensuously, his mind is immediately captured, and thus he falls blindly into the darkness of material existence, just as the moth, maddened by the fire, rushes blindly into its flames. BBT purport. Srila Sridhar Swami explains in this regard that just as a moth is killed by its attraction to the form of fire, similarly a bee can easily be killed by exploiting its attraction to the fragrance of flowers. Furthermore, hunters may trap and kill an elephant, because that's coming up in further verses of this chapter. The elephant can be killed by exploiting its sensuous desire to touch a captive female elephant, and may also kill a deer by attracting it with the sounds of their horns. And a fish is killed by its desire to taste the bait on a hook. Thus, one who desires to learn detachment from material illusion should accept these 5 helpless creatures as guru and learn the needful. So there was some question, how do you serve a fish or a bee? By the instruction received, live your life accordingly. That's service. Certainly one who is lusty to enjoy the illusory form of a woman will be quickly buried in material illusion of the 5 types of fatal attraction involving material sense objects. The lesson of rupa or form is illustrated in this verse. Bhaktisiddhanta summarizes Vishwanatha's commentary, short sentence. When material beauty, especially the form of a woman, attracts a living entity, he becomes captivated. This is what is learned from the moth. So now we're moving along to text 8, 11.8.8. A foolish person with no intelligent discrimination is immediately aroused at the sight of a lusty woman beautifully decorated with golden ornaments, fine clothing, and other cosmetic features. Being eager for sense gratification, such a fool loses all intelligence and is destroyed, just like the moth who rushes into the blazing fire. So, moth lessons. BBT purport. Actually, women have the power to attract men through all the material senses. Men become lusty by seeing the body of a woman, by smelling her fragrance, by hearing her voice, by tasting her lips, and by touching her body. However, the foolish relationship based on material sex attraction begins by seeing, and thus rupa or form is very prominent in the process of ruining one's intelligence. This fact has been exploited in modern times by huge pornography industries, which prey on unfortunate men and women. The example of the foolish moth rushing into the fire and destroying itself is most appropriate in this regard for one who becomes addicted to the momentary pleasure of sex indulgence certainly loses his power to understand the spiritual reality behind dull matter. Paragraph. A lusty person becomes blind and foolish through sex indulgence, and his soul is lost in the fire of sense gratification. This whole disaster can be avoided by taking seriously to the process of chanting the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his empowered representatives, such as Srila Prabhupada, have created a movement to save people from the dungeon of material life, and we should all seriously take advantage of this opportunity. Here is Bhaktisiddhanta's expanded presentation of, this is Bhaktisiddhanta's purport directly. The conditioned souls who are averse to the service of the Supreme Lord are so attached to sense gratification that they always remain in the association of women engaged in their service. Such persons are controlled by their wives, their fine dress, and their cosmetic arrangements, and they cannot understand that these are like a trap meant for their destruction. Foolish people who are driven by the desire to enjoy the objects of the senses, which are created by the illusory energy of Lord Vishnu, consider themselves to be the enjoyers, just like moths attracted by a blazing flame. They endeavor to remain entangled in the material world because they think it is a place of enjoyment. Paragraph. These restless and uncontrolled conditioned souls are attracted by the glaring form of material beauty and madly run towards it, just as a moth rushes towards a blazing fire. Paragraph. As a result, they fall into darkness of ignorance and lose all chance for spiritual happiness. Therefore, those who have material desires and are thus engaged in fruitive activities and who have thus fallen into the trap of material enjoyment should take this lesson from the moth. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary is really short. Although a woman is attractive for all five senses, the perception of her form is mentioned first because of its prominence. Thus, form is the chief sense object. And finally, for this morning, text 9. A saintly person should accept only enough food to keep his body and soul together. He should go from door to door accepting just a little bit of food from each family. Thus, he should practice the occupation of honeybee. Now, Radharani was accusing the honeybee. But here the honeybee is being praised as a guru. BBT purport. Sometimes a honeybee is attracted by the extraordinary aroma of a particular lotus flower and lingers there, neglecting his usual activity of flying from flower to flower. Unfortunately, at sunset, the lotus flower closes, and thus the infatuated honeybee is trapped. Similarly, a sannyasi or brahmachari may discover that excellent foodstuff is available at a particular house, and therefore, instead of wandering from place to place, he may become a veritable resident of such a well-fed household. Thus, he will become bewildered by the illusion of family life and fall down from the platform of renunciation. Also, if a mendicant takes unfair advantage of the Vedic custom of charity and takes too much from a single family, the resentment he causes will disturb the social order. An ideal sage should, like the honeybee, travel from place to place, but he must be careful not to become a chubby bee. Let's read down to Marsh all the way. A chubby bee. Chubby bee. By going to many houses and eating sumptuously at each house. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, such a chubby bee will undoubtedly become entangled in the network of Maya. No one should be overly attached to the gratification of his tongue, because this will lead to an overstuffed belly and then uncontrolled lust. In conclusion, one should not endeavor very much for material sense gratification, but should instead endeavor strenuously to spread the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna. This is the proper use of human energy. Here's Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's purport, and then we'll read Vishwanath's purport, and we're done for this morning. A honeybee collects a small amount of honey from many flowers. The saintly devotee should take this lesson from his spiritual master, the honeybee. Instead of asking for a large quantity of alms from a particular householder, a saintly person should accept only that which is necessary for his maintenance by taking a small amount of food from many householders. Such behavior will not cause any difficulty to the householders. Paragraph. If a householder is regularly asked to give sumptuous food, he may certainly become displeased with the mendicant. those who are mendicants should take this lesson of the honeybee. To accumulate vast assets for undertaking welfare activities is an impediment on the path of Krishna consciousness. And finally, Vishwanatha's commentary. The Avadhuta Brahmana learned from the bee in 2 verses. Just as the bee stays in one lotus flower because of greed for its special fragrance and becomes trapped inside when the petals close at night, the sage, taking shelter of one house because of greed for its good qualities, becomes trapped there by that illusion. Therefore, one should accept a little from each house and eat only to keep the body alive. One commits violence against the householders by taking too much or too little. Interesting. Lessons in detachment. And now we're going to check out the fantastic artwork. Can we put that on the screen? What happened? Okay. Of the 5 types of fatal attraction involving material sense objects, the lesson of rupa or form is illustrated in this verse. Srila Sridhar Swami explains in this print is too small. In this regard, that just as a moth is killed by its attraction to the form of fire, similarly a bee can easily be killed by exploiting its attraction to the fragrance of flowers. Furthermore, hunters may trap and kill an elephant by exploiting its sensuous desire to touch a captive female elephant, and may also kill a deer by attracting it with the sounds of their horns. And there's our friend the fish. Is killed by its desire to taste the bait on a hook. So senses and sense objects can be fatal. And see those 3 moths? How did she make this art? Those little matches over on the left side, and cooking flame, I guess. So the moths are attracted to the flame. And the commentary. The example of the foolish moth rushing into the fire and destroying itself is most appropriate in this regard. The one who becomes addicted to the momentary pleasure of sex indulgence certainly loses his power to understand the spiritual reality behind dull matter. Really good. Okay, here's fire. A lusty person becomes blind and foolish through sex indulgence, and his soul is lost in the fire of sense gratification. Now, it's quite similar to Bhagavad Gita's message, isn't it? Dushparena analena cha. Anala, fire. And again, this is from text 8. The whole disaster can be avoided by taking seriously the process of chanting the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And now comes the bumblebee. A saintly person should accept only enough food to keep his body and soul together Thus, he should practice the occupation of a honeybee. And then there's the lotus flower. Sometimes a honeybee is attracted by the extraordinary aroma of a particular lotus flower and lingers there, neglecting his usual activity of flying from flower to flower. Unfortunately, at sunset, the lotus flower closes, and thus the infatuated honeybee is trapped. Now, I don't see. The honeybee is on that leaf of the lotus, you see? And there's one more honeybee image. An ideal sage should be like the honeybee, travel from place to place, but he must be careful not to become a chubby bee by going to many houses and eating sumptuously at each house. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, such a chubby bee will undoubtedly become entangled in the network of Maya. I get ready for a really interesting image. I don't know how she came up with this one. No one should be overly attached to gratification of his tongue, because this will lead to an overstuffed belly and then uncontrolled lust. And the image speaks for itself. And finally, in conclusion, one should not endeavor very much for material sense gratification, but should instead endeavor strenuously to spread the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna. That is the proper use of human energy. Behind that text, that's, Krishna, the chariot driver, and Arjuna in his chariot, and so teaching the message of Bhagavad Gita, teaching the message of Radha and Krishna's loving relationships, teaching the message of Lord Chaitanya and his loving association with Haridas Thakur, and Srila Prabhupada absorbed in remembrance of these pastimes of Krishna and teaching them through his Bhaktivedanta purports. Nice image. Very nice. So that's it for this morning. Here we are at 8:05. And I'm looking forward to some nice discussion, because the evening it's pastimes and it's much less discussion. But morning time, let's see if there's some discussion. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I had a question about the Avadhuta Brahmana. And when he's going out to nature, he's able to see all of these gurus within these things in nature, like the honeybee and the moth.
Yeah.
Except I'm on, when I go out to nature, I'm unable to it's nature's it's not I don't know how to explain, but
you don't see those things that he sees. So your question is there something wrong with me, or how do I see like he sees, or something like that?
Yeah, there's some philosophical something behind that, some spiritual truth behind the nature, or the nature.
Well, different people have different gifts from Krishna. This may not be yours, and it may be his. So, I know from experience that Prabhupada had that kind of gift. I mean, I can tell you a couple of Prabhupada stories. Here's two. One, he tells a story of a boy that he saw someone playing a drum, a two-ended drum, a khol. In Calcutta, it's called a khol. And so he cut it open because he wanted to see where's the musician inside. And Prabhupada was saying, that's intelligence. Because if there's sound, it's coming from a person. I mean, it was childish way of, but the inductive process and in reasoning that there must be. And then Prabhupada said in his childhood, he heard a radio, and he was convinced there's a band, a musical orchestra inside that little radio. So, because otherwise, how does it come out? And it's childish. But the behind this is that. And so it's part of a major function of intelligence is to discriminate, in the good sense of discriminate, telling one thing from another thing. But if you see a cause and effect, where's the cause? What's to be learned from things that we see? So some persons have a knack for it, just a gift from Krishna for it. Some persons it can be cultivated, like seeing a beautiful scene in nature and thinking God's the creator. An artist with their brush, they can create a nice flower or flower vase or something. But Krishna has created so many flowers. So it's the thoughtfulness tendency behind the acts of perception, viewing things that are around us, and what's to be learned from this. No, there's no need to speculate. We don't do that. Therefore, it's good for us just to hear these 24 examples and meditate on these 24 examples. It's not there's something wrong with you if you don't have that capacity. It says this is a gift, and that the Avadhuta Brahmana had. And there's a principle behind it. The principle behind it is, with the help of intelligence, inductively you can understand there's something that's more permanent. But to get there, lessons of detachment. So let's say it the other way. Supposing somebody's a materialist, a money-interested person. This was described earlier. So when they look at nature, they just see, here's an opportunity, potential for making money. Because that's their heart. They see, here's potential for making money. Just a personal experience. I was, about a year and a half, I was with one other devotee. We were in Puerto Rico distributing books in the Puerto Rico airport. And there were times we found over a period of time, it was a little slower, certain seasons and days of the week. So we decided to be a little creative. We got in pontoon boats and went to different islands to distribute books at those islands to the local people. I remember passing over some islands, looking over the window of the airplane. Over there was a military base. Now, it was just an island, but somebody's got a military mind thinking, defense opportunity. And over there is a tourism opportunity. And over there is an agriculture opportunity. Depending upon, the mind, you see things differently. So some persons are just inclined to see things and see there's lesson from Krishna here. And that's, this Avadhuta Brahmana had that disposition. Anything else?
Maharaj, the detachment for sensory pleasures takes place when there is an attraction to the holy name. That's what is said in the purports, that by chanting of Hare Krishna, then one can get detached from such sensory pleasures.
There's other possibilities as well.
What are those?
Knowledge.
Knowledge and detachment.
Yes. We discussed this. Remember? Prabhupada's saying, without knowledge, detachment is not possible. So, with bhakti comes knowledge, comes detachment. Or with chanting comes bhakti, comes knowledge, comes detachment.
So both are required.
Well, both are required, but you're not going to get the second one without the first one. Supposing someone gets detached because of frustration, that's not going to last. Some people are detached because of frustration. It's not going to last because there's attraction. In frustration, they forget and they go for it again. Same with knowledge. Knowledge is insufficient. Knowledge is incomplete because one can also forget or be overruled by sense attraction. It overrides knowledge. So that's our bhakti teaching. That's the Bhagavatam teaching. Is bhakti is the final solution. So therefore the statement of chanting Hare Krishna ultimately. But a foothold can be helped by knowledge. That's what these 3 chapters are about. 7, 8, 9.
So developing attraction for, of course, the process of bhakti itself has all these elements in it.
And therefore, when we read, it's meant for nourishing bhakti, not just for assisting in detachment. And that's why Krishna is speaking this way to Uddhava, because Uddhava's devotee, he already has bhakti. He is helping to nourish his bhakti. Okay?
Thank you.
Guru Maharaj, here it is said that the sage, how the sage should be through these examples.
How to do what?
How the sage should be.
Okay.
Through these examples.
Okay. Yes.
So
yes.
One may say that I'm not, purely a saintly person. So then
We follow.
I just wanted to be how I am, but not.
Okay. You can stay who you are. That's a choice. But we can choose to follow, although we're not a sage. We can follow sages and become sage-like. Or, have more access to that which is eternal by detachment from the temporary. The madness of chasing after the temporary. I'm not a saint. These are saint people. This is a saint. But I'm learning from the saint who's learning from these manifestations in the world. Online? We have some online questions.
This is by Amara Mataji. Hare Krishna Maharaj, seeking your help in understanding the example of python and honeybee with regard to application in grahastha life with dependents. Can you kindly elaborate on how these 2 principles can be understood and applied properly in our lives?
Well, it's principle based. You're not just like this previous question. You're not a sadhu, you're not a renunciate, you're not an avadhuta Brahmin. But you can learn that the application is, with the python, be satisfied. Like, we heard, there's a certain amount of happiness and distress that comes with guna and karma. That's going to come your way. You don't have to knock yourself out to get free from distress or increase your happiness. And the application is, you live your life as a grahasta, not sadhu yet grahasta. You live your life according to your capacity to follow your prescribed duties or your dharma, and whatever comes, and be satisfied. And the other one is the moth or the honeybee. We all have expectations. You as a grahasta have expectations. That is, from this I'm going to get that. And we have certain needs of a certain amount of that. So accept something that comes from others and expectations. If you're in the mood of service in your dealings with others, you want to give, and whatever comes back, it comes back. Amani na manadena, in other words. And don't have inflated expectations of what will come from this and that interactions with others. Specifically, this is speaking of food, but it applies to other forms of exchanges with others. And don't be overly allured to expecting happiness from this exchange or that exchange in the world. It comes, it comes. And you don't be attached to one or another, some reward or some unpleasant. You just resiliently continue moving from one situation to the next. Why? Because you have a higher mission in life as a grahasta. Your higher mission in life is to connect with Krishna, and there may be some social needs or human needs or preacher needs or whatever. You do those things because it's part of keeping balance in your life, and you move forward with your higher mission. Very resilient because you have that higher mission. You don't have some inflated expectation this way, that way. That's it. More?
It's by Girivardhari Prabhu. He says, accepting there are a lot of attachments in my life which I cannot clean. Are they going to be there till I leave this body? Or can I still submit myself to the Lord who is supreme with impurities?
Well, what you become free from or don't become free from, that's in Krishna's hand, not yours. Results are Krishna's department. Service is your department. So you strive by right means, and you're guaranteed of success, whatever that's going to be. It's up to Krishna. You have an idea of what the goal is, what it should look like, but you strive by right means, and you're guaranteed of success. So whether you're going to become free from shortcomings 100%, that's up to Krishna. You strive for that. And continue to strive as long as it takes to reach the goal. Unalloyed devotional service with Krishna will help you. Yes?
Krishna Maharaj. So you said to be resilient for guna, we have our own gunas and karmas.
Yeah.
But how do I'm able to identify, like for example, I'm listening to some lecture and it is I'm grasping it, but I feel sleepy, like tamasic gun. So at that time, what kind of intelligence I have to put in? Because I know I'm able to identify it, but I'm not able to, like you said, override. So that's overriding it is overriding my intelligence. So those you said even to practice it.
Yes.
So how do I practice at that moment? Because I want to be resilient, but at the same time, I don't know how to apply at that time.
The main element in that moment is faith. Faith in the process, faith in, the mere fact that you're understanding something better than you understood perhaps the same something before. Progress. But I'm whatever. I'm kind of snowed under by lethargy or sleep or, my material conditioning, and it quickly covers over what my intelligence understood. Well, congratulate yourself. There's a little progress here. So faith is in my answer. In that moment, you turn to faith. I'm making progress. I'm going to continue with this. So you invest enthusiasm, yearning and enthusiasm in the process. There's this nice teaching, and I'm yet to find the scriptural reference that says specifically there are 5 things that their effectiveness or efficacy is resting upon faith. And 2 of them that I know, I remember clearly. It's a teacher and a physician. So we'll get better health from a physician when we invest faith in the physician. Same medicine, same diagnosis, same everything. But the efficacy of that exchange with the physician improves according to faith. Now, faith increases by acting in knowledge. Same with the teacher and, the teaching. So I'm using that as an illustration of what you do in the moment as you turn your attention to where's my faith? I'm conditioned like this. My distraction is like that. I have faith. Let me invest in that which I have faith in. No. One isn't necessarily going to do that in the moment or every time that situation arises. But the more we can do that, the more we can go beyond the conditioning and the lapses, and the unsteady becomes steady. Because that covering is just, it's either the result of past sin, that's the karma part, or past offense, which is different than karma. And it blocks. And our intelligence becomes, so in that moment you turn, I'm saying, you reinvest in faith in that moment, however strong or weak, or somewhere in between. You invest with faith in the very process and be patient. So that, Uddhava Gita. You're familiar with that, right? Nectar of instruction. Nectar of instruction. You can look it up. Uddhava Gita. Text 3, I think it is. Nectar of instruction. The first 3 principles for making progress. So, with faith, Uddhava, Nishchaya, enthusiasm, patience, conviction. I'm heading in the right direction. That's conviction. That's faith. Because that faith supports the enthusiasm and allows you to remain patient because you have faith. So, and you do that in the moment, and your moments will become more steady and less covered. You have something further. Okay.
Guru Maharaj, the ocean is deep, and because of that it doesn't overflow or dry up. So what is the depth in the devotees that
your Krishna consciousness, right? Your faith. So good fortune, good times, and challenging times, ebb and flow. But how does tolerance for duality come? Remaining equal when there's these two extremes: good fortune, ill fortune. It's the depth is your connection with Krishna, your Krishna consciousness, your faith, and that doesn't get disturbed by the dualities of material existence and your experience of those dualities on the sense level and the mind level. You may detect what's going on out there and what's going on out there. You'll become dull, but there's something else that's the reality of who you are and the reality of your mission of life, and you stay fixed. And that was one of the things that we heard. Something.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. We have bhakti process, everything included to attach to Krishna, and below that we have the Sankhya philosophy to know through the material. And these 24 gurus you mentioned, that's basically it is further subpart of the Sankhya philosophy.
Yes.
And it's limited, but we are learning from them through following them. That's the reason we call them gurus.
Yeah. From in a broad sense, guru is one from whom one receives knowledge. And he's honoring his gurus because from them he's received knowledge, and it's helped him become, through knowledge, detached and fixed as a sadhu, despite the changing circumstances of life. So we are less than sadhu-like because we're very much impacted by the changing circumstances of life. But we want to become sadhu-like. We want to become. So we're hearing from Krishna. Really nice. Okay? Something more.
Example given about the moth and how it's attracted to the fire and it goes and dies. Can that attraction be, or will that attraction be turned to Krishna, the form of Krishna, through the knowledge and detachment?
Well, it's through bhakti, but there's the negative and there's the positive. The negative is material forms have captured our attention, and whatever that is. Not just the form of the opposite sex. There's other forms that one may be attracted to. Whatever that is. Somebody wants, whatever. They have a car, they want a better car. Something. And as long as we're attracted to material forms and trying to be the enjoyers of them, it blocks our capacity to know who we are and to know Krishna and our relationship with him and everything. So back to your question, before I can become attracted to the form of Krishna, one may have some little attraction to the form of Krishna, but transcendental attraction is going to be greatly assisted by detachment from attraction to the temporal. It's using the language of Rupa Goswami, or Prabhupada explaining in Nectar of Devotion. It may help one, knowledge may help one get a foothold. We like trying to climb some height. You need a foothold to get to that higher place. So knowledge may help. It's not the essence, but it'll help. Okay? Okay.
This is by Radhika Mataji. the modern media personifies a woman as an object of enjoyment.
Yeah.
And the sections you are reading seem to objectify a woman who might, by her good or ill fortune, be somewhat endowed physically, as a temptress. This suggestive depiction seems harmful even to those that are trying to be Vaishnavas. Will you please comment?
I'm not. You're making a statement, and the statement applies from what I gather from what you described. It's not only materialists can fall prey to sense attraction, devotees can also fall prey to sense attraction. And so, does it apply also to devotees? Yes. And it's not just, it's one-sided, it's men attracted to women, but it can be, the converse, women attracted to men. Seeing a man as an opportunity to fulfill my material desires, sensual or otherwise material desires. So that it is an obstacle on the path of bhakti for devotees, as well as just a total covering of higher consciousness for the non-devotee. So if you're seeking confirmation, confirm. What's being spoken of a non-devotee is applicable for a devotee. Context is different, but the principle is the same. Does that hit the question from what you've understood?
Yeah, Sri Radhika Mataji just clarified. She said, no, my question is the depiction seems to objectify even Vaishnavis as temptresses.
No. Well, someone may read it like that, but that's certainly not the intention of the Avadhuta Brahman. Now, it is true, not that a particular Vaishnavi is prancing around with the design of alluring the mind of men and then admonishing them, oh, you become allured by me, or something, or becoming the enjoyer with them or something. There may be some Vaishnavis or women in the dress of a Vaishnava or Vaishnavi that have that mentality, that it's not characterizing. Here's a little Prabhupada story. She'll like this one. I think everyone will like this one. There was a period of time in the Hare Krishna movement when the sannyasis were out of control. They were like bashing grahastas and bashing women and bashing. It was like really awful. And, it got to Prabhupada's attention. There were different manifestations of it, but part of it was the Radha Damodar party. The Radha Damodar party traveled around in buses, like 8 buses or something. And the message was, temples are Maya, because it's just grahastas. So you brahmacharis get on the bus and help us distribute books. It was anyway, but it wasn't just Radha Damodar, it was sannyasis in general. Not some sannyasis had that bashing, denigrating kind of talk. And when they came to temples, that was their Bhagavatam class. That was how they spoke. Very degrading and denigrating and all that. So, during that period of time, there was a Mayapur Vrindavan festival. And when Prabhupada had guests, his schedule was, in the afternoon, if he had guests, he would meet with guests. And if there wasn't guests, he would have a darshan. So one afternoon, there was a darshan, and the room filled up. Ladies over on this side, men over on this side. And then Prabhupada came in, because in Mayapur, those of you who've been to Mayapur have seen his rooms, really small rooms. And the back room was where, he had his bedroom and bathroom and stuff like that. And then there's a connecting door, and in the front, that was where he had a little desk, like one of these. He'd sit at the desk, and there were people on the other side of the desk that he would meet with. So we were like packed in this room. And Prabhupada came in and everyone paid obeisances. And then he sat there and just looked around the room. Didn't say anything. And I remember what my feeling was. My feeling was, our relationship with Prabhupada is he's like a television. He's just supposed to entertain us. We turn him on and, we get entertained. That's not right. So he didn't say anything. It was like silent for quite some time. Really uncomfortable. I mean, he didn't comment anything. He just was silent. Looked around the room. Finally, one lady in the back raised her hand. But called on her, she said something. He turned to his secretary and said, what did she say? It was, I took it, it was deliberately not receiving her message, but receiving it indirectly. And her message was, Prabhupada, the men are treating women disrespectfully. And, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Because it was going on at the time, and Prabhupada knew it was going on at the time. And then Prabhupada gave a double answer. He said, that's not very good. We should be respectful to all living entities. And then he went on to say, and the women should not dress in a decorative manner with the view of attracting the attention of the man and, carrying herself in such a way that the minds of the men become disturbed. He put some weight on the ladies to not behave like that. Now, I wasn't of the opinion that ladies are trying to do like that. And I don't know if he was of the opinion that some ladies are trying to do like that. But he was putting something on the balance, on the pan scale. Men should be like this, and ladies should be like that. Men should not be like this, and ladies should not be like that. And let's just assume there were some ladies that were doing like that. Maybe there were. And in case there were, here's some warning for those ladies that may do like that. Here's some warning for the men. They should not do like that. He put responsibility on the ladies, and it was like this. Because I was expecting there'd be, not only that, here's this anecdote and that anecdote, that someone did this and said that, so on. He put it to rest. So, one should not be such a Vaishnavi. And one should not be such a Vaishnava by dress or by name only. So, if it appears that the purport or the message is denigrating of Vaishnavis as carrying themselves around like alluring men, that should not be the case. And someone who is a man or a woman who are endowed with beauty, that's Krishna's kindness. And that should be used in service to Krishna in a proper way, in a humble mood of service way. There's examples of how Prabhupada engaged some of his female disciples that were, like one girl from Australia was a fashion model, and she became a Hare Krishna devotee. So she was pictured in, maybe it was even the cover of, the Hare Krishna People. There was a magazine. So she, very attractive lady, dressed in a sari and tilak and smiling nicely, not, something else. So women, to the public, Hare Krishna women are also very beautiful and attractive, and they're using all of that and using whatever endowments Krishna has given them in service to Krishna. That's nice. It's nice. Someone can sing nicely. Someone can paint nicely. Someone can whatever. It's in Krishna's service. That's the fruit of their past piety. Here comes in the form of Janma, Aishwar, Shruta, or Shri, and you use that in Krishna service properly. We're done.
There's a follow-up from Sri Radhika Mataji.
Okay.
It's just a comment. She says, Guru Maharaj, thank you for your response. Something very deep and disturbing is being triggered within me, simulated by the descriptions of women you are reading lately. I take responsibility.
Prabhupada ki jai.